So a new Sonic and Shadow Generations trailer was just revealed, and a lot of people may have more questions than we have answers. One thing we can say for certain, though, is that the gameplay does look really good. The Doom powers look compelling. I'm very optimistic about the release of this game. It seems like the scope and scale is not going to be too crazy. Sonic Team's just going to have to get back to the basics and make some fun levels for us to play, on top of the already great Sonic Generations. So with that being said, one of the biggest things that people noticed from this trailer was this. People noticed that Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers is in Sonic and Shadow Generations, and that led a lot of people to say, why? How is a location that Shadow has never visited before in the past featured in this game? Shouldn't this be Shadow's past adventures? If you look right here, we're in the white space hub world, and you'll see in the background Chaos Island as well. So it looks like it's going to be a linear stage in the game. I don't know about you guys, but I'm officially confused, and the discourse has been on Twitter. The theories are out there, and I'd like to share with you guys all the theories that we have possible for this new Sonic and Shadow Generations game before everything is laid out for us on October 25th. Maybe there'll be more trailers on the way, but this is what we got. So I think the most important thing for Sonic and Shadow Generations is to reveal context. When does the story of this game take place? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that this takes place, according to the creator Takashi Iizuka in an interview, during Sonic Generations. So as far as the timeline placement goes for this game, this takes place during Sonic Generations. Surprise, surprise. While this may be obvious for some, if you're a lore nerd like me, the Sonic timeline is very important, and we want to know exactly when everything takes place. And the reason being, hello, I'm tapping the sign again, Sega hired a Sonic lore manager, or they have a lore council, to ensure that the universe is more meaningfully connected. So while Pipsqueak Sonic and Modern Sonic are running around in a very happy adventure, a lighthearted adventure at that, Shadow is going to be simultaneously fighting and chasing his inner demons that traumatically haunt him. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So while Sonic is having his happy little birthday party with all of his friends that Shadow, of course, didn't show up to because he's cranky, the Time Eater is going to show up and disrupt the entire world and timeline. While this is happening, we're going to be finding out what Shadow was doing when he was too busy to make Sonic's birthday party. We all know how Sonic Generations ends. Classic and Modern Sonic defeat the Time Eater, and we also know that Shadow ends up making an appearance at the end when Sonic fights the Time Eater. So we know how this story ends, but we don't know what really happens in between, and that gives Sega a lot of flexibility to tell a story about Shadow. Clearly, it seems like the story about Sonic and Shadow Generations is going to center around Shadow chasing around Black Doom. As far as the story description goes, it says that in the standalone campaign, Shadow's nemesis, Black Doom, has reemerged and threatens to take over the world once again. So it seems like even though all the foes you face in Sonic Generations are basically just rehashes of things that happened in the past, it seems like Black Doom has a little bit more sentience or control over what happens, and maybe he's the one that's able to manipulate time. It also says Shadow's going to be journeying into his past and confronting painful memories, and he's trying to save the world. So it's like Black Doom has a completely separate agenda from the Time Eater, and I don't think this is as simple as rehashing previous fights like in the Sonic story. Last but not least, the final bit of context is obviously that things that happen in Sonic Generations are things that Shadow has not yet experienced. So he's going into the future in this game, not just the past, which if you look at these Sonic Forces type robots here, looks to be Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces. So we're going to be going into Frontiers, we're going to be going into Forces. I mean, to me, the craziest part is that Shadow is on Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers that Shadow never even went to himself. So this is where all the confusion happens. So now that we finally have the context of the story for Shadow Generations and we know like what the fan confusion is, now we can finally get into the theories. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this tweet right here actually set off a lot of Sonic discourse on Twitter. It says, so how is this taking place during Generations? And this is referring to Chaos Island. And I think the simplest theory and the simplest answer for most is that the entity that travels through time travels through time. Without any lore significance or any rhyme or reason, maybe the timeline is just so disrupted and off that, you know, given that everything has basically been reverted into an open hub world kind of thing, like that's what the entire timeline is, Shadow can just go to the past. Shadow can go to the future. Shadow can go go to places that he's never been to before. If you think about it, Classic Sonic was in Crisis City. Was Classic Sonic ever in Crisis City? No. So the answer is it's, maybe Sega wanted to reuse some assets and just kind of focus on a very simple time travel-y story. And Shadow just happens to be displaced in a location in the future because the Time Eater disrupts the timeline. But then again, what is like Black Doom's motivation in the story, and why is he in all of these other places? That, though, those are some things that we have questions to. But if Classic Sonic could be on Planet Wisp and Crisis City, then why can't Shadow be in Chaos Island in Sonic Frontiers? Keep it simple, stupid. That's the theory. It's almost like the theory is there is no theory. But this is anti-fun. There's a Sonic Lore Council after all. Surely this has to be more interesting and there has to be some lore significance to this. Well, there are more theories. So this next theory is probably the best one, and this is that it's all connected. It's that everything matters. It's that they're going to try to tie in everything together. It would be really cool if they did this, although it would take a lot to pull off. So this comment is from a viewer on the channel, Bumbo7611, and the post says, my guess is that Shadow, Gerald, or Doom have some connection with Chaos Island in their past. Maybe we'll see why it's called Chaos Island. I don't know, but looks hype. Let's do a little bit of investigating and deep digging into why this could be a potential theory. Here's also a very interesting graph that I saw on Twitter from this user right here, and it says, at first I thought adding Chaos Island was a harmless time travel explanation, but now I'm leaning towards it being chosen specifically for a Black Arms, Shadow, the Ancients, Chao birthplace, and lore dump zone. Here's my tin hat conspiracy chart that I whipped up for the fun of it. I'm thinking Shadow himself doesn't have to specifically ever step foot on Chaos Island, but this Shadow Generations where Black Doom is messing with him while retelling history, Chaos Island could somehow be how the Ancients, Chaos, Chao, Black Arms, and Shadow all link up. So that's a lot, right? Well, let me explain. So Shadow the Hedgehog was created by Professor Gerald Robotnik 50 years ago during Project Shadow to help find a cure for his granddaughter's terminal illness. Simultaneously, the government was also looking to develop weapons of mass destruction. Gerald wanted to subvert the research and find a cure for his granddaughter. During Gerald Robotnik's research, he actually stumbled upon two things, one of which being Angel Island, which is the shrine of the Master Emerald, which is what he helped create the shrine on the Ark after. Also, during Gerald's research, he discovered the Mystic Ruins. Inside the Mystic Ruins, there is a temple that predict the future of a water god destroying a city, which eventually happens in Sonic Adventure. Between Angel Island and the Mural of Chaos, while creating Shadow, one of the inspirations that Gerald took was the Master Emerald Shrine, which he recreates in the Ark, and he also creates beings called Artificial Chaos, which were meant to replicate Chaos using Chaos drives. Of course, the reason why he was doing all this stuff and doing all this research was so he could create his ultimate life form, which eventually became Shadow the Hedgehog. Also, during Project Shadow and the creation of Shadow, it's important to remember that Shadow the Hedgehog was created in part by Black Doom, who linked up with Gerald Robotnik. Black Doom offered some of his DNA to Gerald in order to create Shadow, in exchange for the Chaos Emeralds 50 years later. Also, keep in mind, Black Doom is the primary antagonist of Sonic and Shadow Generations, so that's where the connection is starting to form. Also, one final thing. During the creation of Project Shadow, one of the things that Gerald was studying was the Chaos Emeralds, and which game expands on the lore of the Chaos Emeralds and their creation? You guessed it, Sonic Frontiers. In Sonic Frontiers, we learn about the origins of the Chaos Emeralds as well as the Ancients, a civilization that was wiped out many years ago. But also, they look like Chaos, the person that Gerald Robotnik was creating artificial Chaos of. And Chaos is just a mutated Chao, so basically all of this could potentially be connected. When Gerald Robotnik discovered Mystic Ruins, Angel Island, and eventually tried to recreate Master Emerald Shrines as well as artificial Chaos, it's very possible that during his research on the Chaos Emeralds, he discovered the Ancients, and he also based a lot of this research off of eventually creating Shadow the Hedgehog. And Chaos Island is one of the places that the Ancients inhabited, so maybe this could be a place that is more significant to Shadow than most people think. Just a theory, though. It seems like Black Doom knows a lot more about Shadow and what his fate is going to be, so maybe Gerald Robotnik or Black Doom or whoever has discovered Chaos Island in the past, and they're transporting Shadow there to mess with him because it is somehow significant to him. While it's true that Classic Sonic didn't visit the locations in Sonic Generations, it's true that Sonic, who is the same person as Classic Sonic, visited every single location in the game. So maybe it's possible that Chaos Island is actually significant to Shadow and his backstory. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Given the fact that Sega has a lore council and they're trying to create a more cohesive and connected story, this would be a perfect way to connect Sonic Frontiers, the Ancients, the lore, Project Shadow, and everything together in a way that's seamless, in a way that works. You want to talk about universe and world building and expanding on your stories? This is probably a very good way to do it, as opposed to just saying, oh, it's time travel. travel and we're reusing assets. Given the fact that it seems very likely that at least some of Shadow's creation was inspired by Chaos, which in turn would probably be inspired by the Ancients, it's plausible that this could be a theory. So here's another good theory from the comments. It says, new theory, since the Time Eater is being controlled by the two Eggmen to undo all of their previous losses, maybe they try to remove future losses as well. And that's why we see Chaos Island and Sunset City and Cyberspace City as well, question mark. Another possibility is that the Time Eater is attacking places that Sonic's been to because of Eggman's control on it. Sonic has been to the Ark, he's been to Westopolis, Radical Highway, Central City, City Escape, he's been to Bullet Station, Rail Canyon, Kingdom Valley, Sunset City, and Chaos Island. So yeah, it's been confirmed at the end of the generations that both Eggmen are controlling the Time Eater. So everything that the Time Eater does seems to be an action directly created by Eggman, which is why we visit all of these past Sonic locations. So maybe Shadow is just caught in the middle of it, and that's why we're seeing some previous Sonic locations. However, it's a little bit interesting given Black Doom's role in the story, which is kind of what throws a wrench in all of this. It's like, what is Black Doom's true motivation in this game? Does he have any influence over the time control in this game? Does he have any collaboration with the Time Eater? Does he share any similar powers? That's kind of where we're all left in the dark, and we're gonna have to find out what happens next, because it seems like all the illusions that Shadow is experiencing is due to Black Doom as opposed to the Time Eater. Maybe there's another theory. If you look at Kingdom Valley from Sonic 06 being in the game, potentially Mephiles could team up with Black Doom or play some type of role in the story, because Mephiles actually deals with direct time travel. The character that Shadow shares the biggest connection with in Sonic 06 probably is Mephiles. I mean, Mephiles literally takes on Shadow's form. Shadow's the one that releases Mephiles in the past, and again, he's the one that actually deals with time travel. So maybe, you know, Black Doom somehow awakens Mephiles. I think it'd be really cool if that was the case, although I don't think it's likely, because I don't know, I just don't see it happening. But hey, maybe that has something to do with it as well. Maybe he shows Black Doom how to manipulate Shadow and do some time travel stuff. Who knows? So all this is very confusing. I would like to see, no matter what they do, try to make the Sonic world, universe, and lore more interconnected and make the stories of old matter. And if they do any cool connections like the second theory or even possibly this theory, I think it's better than them just slapping Shadow in a Sonic level because it's the time travel story and we call it a day, which is certainly a possibility. So what are your theories for what all of this means?